Well, y'all made it. Y'all are amongst the faithful few who have made it through the whole thing. There's not a prize or anything, but I'm hoping it's something that will give you maybe some encouragement as you go through these next few weeks. I know that what I have brought during this meeting has not been earth-shattering. For most of you, it really has not been new information. But when you think about some things we do, like the partaking of the Lord's Supper, we don't partake of the Lord's Supper on the first day of every week because we don't remember that Jesus died for our sins, but it helps to renew our perspective. I think some of the things hopefully that we've looked at will renew some of your perspective that you've already had. And so we're going to wrap this up. We're going to do it now in 14 minutes and 10 seconds or less, and I'll make you a deal. If you can make 15 minutes, I'll just go 15 minutes, and then I will just add 1 minute for each person that I catch dozing off. And I'll try not to call out their names, just their initials, and we'll go from there. Um, if you wonder why I use a stopwatch, I really respect people's time, and I try to prepare things that hopefully I can get out in the allotted time, including this little story about my stopwatch. And I do so because I don't like it when people waste my time. And I don't mean by if they talk too long or anything like that. I mean that they weren't prepared for what they were doing. And so I just don't like that. It's not that listening to a sermon or a gospel meeting is a waste of time if they're prepared and they have something that will touch our hearts. But I have noticed through preaching now for I don't know how many years that there are times where I was not as prepared as I should have been. And so I kept on with the clock trying to catch up. And I stopped that probably the first year I started preaching because it's not your fault. And so I respect that so much. I had a economics teacher that was my hero, still is. He had an example of the perfect shopping experience. He said, it's like a bank robbery. You're in, you're out, nobody gets hurt. And I thought, this man is a genius, and he was. His classes were worth looking at. And so he was my hero until this year. And my son-in-law, of all people, who would never think that it would be a son-in-law, but in my case it is, because my daughter was due to have her baby. They had to go 90 miles away to have that baby. And so they went to Lubbock and they had that baby in the parking lot. And I just admired that so much. His well, I'll go with you, but we're not going inside. That is the ultimate in time efficiency. And so actually that wasn't quite the way it happened, but she did have her baby in the back of the van, and he's a keeper. We're excited to have him. But the idea hopefully is we're going to look at some things in a way that maybe will set what we've been talking about. You know what question I'm going to ask you to begin with, and it's this. If somebody could show you how to attain the most cherished desire of your heart, would you be willing to do what it takes to get that? And most of us would say absolutely. But when it comes down to it, even in our most cherished desires, it's usually the little things that come up that we end up choosing over our most cherished desire. That nap on the couch over working out if I needed to do that, or that buying a pizza for the third time that week over getting debt free, or choosing to get involved with things of the world that would take me away from God. And when you think about it, how sad it would be if we were not in heaven someday because we chose to be angry people, or we chose to be people who were so critical or so cynical that we actually drove people away from God in Christ. This is a marvelous opportunity. We have so many years, so much time to get everything taken care of, and there's not nearly enough time. So the secret to being able to achieve your most cherished desire is just to decide to do it. And I mean, really decide, because once you've decided to do it, you will do it. But I'm not saying, yes, I would like to do that. Yes, I wish I could do that. I mean, planting your flag in the ground, your standard, and pulling out your sword and just absolutely making a stand. And so let's get to work is the theme. We're just going to look at a couple of passages, unless one of you drops off, and then I'll just take that as carte blanche. But Matthew chapter 20, I love this passage. It is one of the most encouraging passages in all the Bible. Verse 1, Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men in his vineyard. I love Jesus's parables. Every one of us can understand it and relate to it. So a man's going out to hire them. You know this parable. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day. A denarius was a day's wages. Whatever that amount was would have gotten them through for the day for all their needs. And so he said, if you will work for me for a day, I will pay you to live for a day. And so about the third hour, he went out. After he'd hired them to start with, he goes out the third hour, saw others standing around and doing nothing. And he said to them, you also go and work in my vineyard. I'll pay you whatever's right. Now we're not talking about a day's wages anymore. The man just, I'll give you what's fair. And then he went out about the 6th hour, and the 9th hour, did the same thing. At the 11th hour, can you imagine a 12-hour workday? I think the 11th hour, yeah, y'all can. Especially, there's some farmers here. You think, oh, that would be heaven, wouldn't it? Just an 11-hour, 12-hour workday. The 11th hour. So there's just an hour or two left in the day, depending on what part of that 11th hour he goes out. And he saw others standing around. And he asked them, why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing? And they said, because nobody's hired us. And he said to them, you also go and work in my vineyard. And then, and you know the rest of it. He lines them up afterwards, starting with the ones that started last, and he gives them a denarius, a whole day's wages for what they had left in that day. But by the time he gets down to the ones that he had a contractual obligation, the oral contract, I understand, but he was bound. I will pay you a denarius for this day. And he paid it. They were mad. They had been, I imagine, thrilled to have the work at the beginning of the day. But as they got going through the day, they said they went through the heat of the day, and you're paying us the same? And of course, Jesus's point was, if I want to be generous with my money, can't I do with it what I want to do? If I want to pay them the same. I have found there's been a number of times in my life, maybe I was gung-ho the first hour, and maybe about the third hour I was standing around, not like these men that worked all day. And then I had to be prompted again, get back to work. But if you will, I'll pay you. What's fair? And then about the 6th hour, the same thing. I'm starting to wane. Maybe I'm in my 30s or my 40s at this point. And I've got a lot going, more than maybe I've ever had before. And then about the 9th hour, and I'm starting to get closer to retirement. I'm starting to wear down. And yet the same entreaty. If you will work for me, I'll pay you what's fair. And then the 11th hour, the day's work is nearly gone, and maybe I've wasted a good part of the day. And he still comes and he says, I'll pay you what's fair. And then they found out what was fair was the entire day's wages. God is not going to reward you with heaven and you with 2/3 of heaven and you with 1/10 of heaven. It's all or nothing. And it's based on how strong you finished. In Galatians, Paul talked to the people about, you are running a good race. Who cut in on you and kept you from obeying the truth? To my shame, the one who cut in on me usually is me. And I understand races. I love watching track. I enjoy the thrill of it. And nothing bothers me more when I'm watching athletes than when they give up. Than when they hang their head, They might go through the motions, they might cross the finish line, but essentially the race is over for them. They don't finish the race. They might physically cross the line, but they did not finish the race. The ones I love, even if they're the slowest turtle on the track, are the ones that give it everything they've got from the beginning of the race till the end of the race. And that's what God is seeking. But if you've messed up, if you've gotten distracted, God essentially is making you the same deal. I will pay you the same thing I was going to pay you had you been faithful your entire life, but you've got to start now. And the reason is because we're not just running the race to cross the finish line ourselves. We're running it for everybody that we're going to come in contact with. You have a circle of people in your life, for whatever reason, that you very likely are their best hope at salvation. You are the one, whether they realize it or not, that they are counting on more than anybody to introduce them or to encourage them with the good news of Jesus Christ. And if you don't do it, if you fail to do that, they literally might be separated from God for all eternity, burning in a fire that was intended for the devil and his angels. And we might find ourselves in the same position because we knew better. We knew that that was the risk we were taking, and we let them go ahead and have it. And we've talked about the reasons we do that. I didn't want to offend them. I didn't want to lose them as a friend. I didn't want to push away a family member. We've all been there, and we all understand how delicate those things are. But let me just say this. If you're afraid of pushing away a family member because you're trying to encourage them to come back, I'm not saying beat them with a stick to get them to come back. I mean, because you are telling them, I beg you, this is real. Please look into it. You've got to change your life. I have a family member in my life who I love, who I pray about every day, almost without fail, who has gone in a direction that is just wrong. And I have told that person, this is wrong, and that I love you, but as long as you're going in this direction, you cannot be around my family. I just won't, you just can't. But I want to do everything I can to help you to get back. That's not easy. I've seen people do that and they have won their family back. I mentioned Jack several times because he was such an influence on me becoming a preacher. I remember Jack Carter saying, if I had a child that I thought that was lost, and what it required for me to get them back was to crawl on my hands and knees on broken glass to do so, he said, I would do it. It's that important. We've got to know it's that important. But we also have to realize what we're bringing them. You remember the fish deal where they wanted to make their day? You're making their life. You're making their eternity. If they have decided to be lost, so be it. But that doesn't mean that we cannot come back to them, that we cannot pray for them, that we cannot be looking for the opportunity. We won't turn over there, but you know the parable of the prodigal son. Do you remember that when he took what his father, the abundance of his father's house, so that he could go off into sin, his father allowed him to use his resources, but he did not allow him to use his house. It was forbidden. He could not come back. But do you remember when the prodigal son came to his senses? What happened? He started back, and the father saw him from a long way off. And he rushed to him, threw his arms around him, welcomed him home, even though he knew that there were people back at home who would not appreciate him getting off that easy. If you and I get to the point where we think that somebody who has been lost in sin but who is genuinely repenting comes back, if we think they're getting away with something, we're missing the point. And if we think the guys and the ladies that start at the 11th hour are getting away with something, they have very likely had a lifetime that has been devoid of God's blessings. They may have had temporary moments of happiness. They may have had temporary periods of calm, but they have not had joy and they have not had peace, because that is only a fruit of the Spirit, and it is always reserved for God's people. And why would we think that we who have enjoyed that, if we've enjoyed that for so long, why would we be mad that somebody now gets to come in and taste a little bit of that for their physical life and then forever? Why would we not be weeping tears of joy? Somebody could show you what you needed to do to attain the most cherished desires of your life, would you do it? And the answer has to be yes. And then once we've done that, let's get to work. It says 15:08. I owe each one of you 8 seconds out of your life. Just tell me what you want to do for that. The invitation is open. If you need to respond, please do that while we stand and sing.